Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, and today I've cooked up a new edition of the tier list. This is version 5.5, taking all of the new uniforms, all of the new characters, and adding them and moving them around to their respective places on the meta tier list. Now, the general PSA that we get into before we actually talk about the details of all of these characters, this is just my personal opinion. This is not necessarily the way that you have to play the game or the way that you have to see the game. You're welcome to disagree with me. These are just how I think, different characters match up against one another, taking into account their highest possible build, tier 3 if they can, or level 70, gear 25, CTPs, maxed uniforms, ISO 8 sets, Uru, etc. And then sort of seeing where they land in terms of what they can do in the game overall in terms of PvE and PvP content, and then how they shake up in comparison to one another, because it's also important to recognize that. Just a really quick reminder as well of things on the tier list. We do have a few missing characters down here at the bottom because the tier list is just that huge with over 200 characters now. And we have, of course, the recent edition of the Omega tier. Now, the Omega tier has 2 new characters on it, but the Omega tier is essentially for characters who display outstanding performance, so characters who are dominant in both PvP and PvE content without having to completely swap over their entire build. So these are characters that can basically do both things very, very well. And they can also do both things very well while generally focusing on one more than another. Now, of course, they're not going to be perfect in PvE with a PvP build, but they can definitely still punch very high and pack a huge punch, regardless of their build one way or the other, although they can struggle in certain situations like not giving Quicksilver or not giving Deadpool guard break immunity. But generally speaking, they are going to dominate all parts of the game, and you'll see them pretty much everywhere. Now, a couple of other things to note before we get started. I have a question for you guys. The tier list is seeming a bit crowded horizontally, or vertically. There seem to be way too many characters building up in the legendary and heroic tiers, and I don't like that, and it sort of starts to confuse, because you have characters like Ant-Man and Spider-Man in the same category as characters like Miles Morales and Electro. No offense to Electro and Miles, but they're nowhere near as strong as these characters at the top here, but they're both in the legendary tier. Now, I mean, you could just take some of these characters from here and move them over here, and take some of the characters from here and move them over here, sure, but my question to you is, should we add another tier? We have over 200 characters in the game, and being able to fit them all onto basically 6 tiers, because, basically 5 tiers, because you're going to have very few characters in the Omega tier and very few characters, hopefully, in the Toilet tier. So yeah, should we come up with a new sort of in-between tier here, perhaps like Heroic Plus or Legendary Plus, something like that? Or am I sort of micromanaging too much? Additionally, I've bolded all of the characters that have been added as new characters with the bracket new, or the characters who have gotten uniforms, or for some reason or another they've moved up or down on the tier list. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with the juiciest stuff over here on the far left-hand corner. We have Quicksilver and Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer didn't actually change or get anything new from the last Uncanny Avengers Agents of Atlas update. He is just so dominant, and week after week we see different characters getting banned in PvP, whether it's Jean Grey or Thanos, or it's Spider-Man 2099, or it's Captain Marvel, or it's this character, or it's that character, and the one constant is that more and more teams have Silver Surfer on them, either as the second, first, or third character. So I strongly recommend that anybody out there who still hasn't built up Silver Surfer, get on it. He is by far the best native tier 2 without a uniform in the game. It's not even close. And once he gets a uniform or a tier 3, shit's going down. I can guarantee you that. So he absolutely deserves to be here. And for those of you that are doubting it, I am going to put out some content soon for showing off my PvP built Silver Surfer, still being able to do like 80 plus Shadowland and also high levels of World Boss Ultimate. So I'm excited for that. Quicksilver, on the other hand, is the biggie that you guys all were wondering about. How much better did he get with his tier 3? Well, he's in the Omega tier. Bada boom. Now, it is a bit more contentious. He's not quite as strong as Deadpool for PvE, but he's a little bit stronger than Deadpool for PvP. So there's an interesting sort of yin and yang going on here. if you look at these two characters and you say, well, Cynicalex, they pretty much cost the same amount. It's Black Antimatter versus Feathers. They both have uniforms. They're both speed types. They're both tier 3. They're both in the Omega tier. Which one should I get, Cynicalex? Well, ask yourself this: do you want to dominate PvE more, or do you want to dominate PvP more? And then basically, Deadpool dominates PvE content more, especially World Boss, and Quicksilver dominates PvP more, especially Timeline Battle, one-on-one situations. Now, there is also the question of Deadpool struggling against debuff immune characters like Scarlet Witch World Boss Ultimate at high levels, GBR, stuff like that. Quicksilver won't struggle, but I think Quicksilver will struggle more with a non-CTP build than Deadpool will. Quicksilver with a non-CTP build still has a cap around, you know, stage 60-ish for Proxima and maybe 70-ish for Corvus, whereas Deadpool, the boy can go higher. He can go even higher without even using a damage proc. So that is where I sort of compare them in terms of PvE. In terms of PvP, Deadpool just doesn't have enough dodge or guaranteed dodge to avoid the damage, and there's just too many characters that do too much damage at this point. So Quicksilver's dodge and guaranteed dodge really help him stay alive, dodge the Jean Grey BS guard break immunity penetration to you know, give him survivability. Onto the Mythic tier, Luna Snow basically stays put. The sad thing is Luna Snow and Scarlet Witch really didn't get better. You know, Luna Snow got better, I should say. She didn't get good enough to move to another tier, and of course she can't move any higher because she's already in the Mythic tier at the top. In Scarlet Witch's case, I almost want to move her down because her uniform is such a disappointment. It's got some changes, it's got some possible buffs, but it really just... it sort of just shifts everything around on the table. It doesn't really actually change much, which is disappointing in my opinion. But the big story of the entire update, I would say, along with Vision, is Rogue. She jumps, and I have this little up arrow with the 2. That means the amount of tiers the character jumped from the last time I reviewed them. So before this, let me remind you, Rogue was over here with Kid Kaiju and Crescent, or sorry, Crescent. Kid Kaiju, Wave, and Domino. Now she's up here. She vaulted up to the top of Mythic. She absolutely destroys PvE content. She's a beauty and a blast to play as, and she can do work in PvP even with a PvE build, which is very, very impressive. And I cannot wait to see what else she can do with further testing with something like a CTP of Destruction or with CTP of Regeneration. I'm very, very excited for that. She absolutely deserves to be here. And the easiest way to answer it is look at Spider-Man 2099. She's a better version of Spider-Man 2099. Essentially, she has all of the same tricks that he does except for the ignore dodge. And then she's better, in my opinion, for PvP content because of the self-healing and because of how tanky she is with the damage reduction and all the other things that she has to sort of avoid attacks or to take less damage. And then we have over in the Legendary tier, we have a new addition here, 2 new additions actually, White Fox and Arrow. I think a lot of people are sleeping on White Fox, and I know the free-to-play players don't necessarily want to start spending their crystals on something other than uniforms, because traditionally speaking, we spend our crystals on uniforms. But yeah, not us. I think you guys gotta start investing in White Fox. With the uniform, she's honestly a very strong character. On her own, she did stage 50 Corvus with time to spare. I mean, I was using Cable's leadership and I was using Wiccan's passive. I had just her own self buffs, nothing else. Except for the strikers, and she was putting in damage with a CTP of Destruction. So you can go even higher with a CTP of Energy, possibly Rage, I don't know. She can still do work with a damage proc Obelisk, and she's got PvP potential. I'm telling you, don't sleep on the Fox. And then Arrow, just a solid character. She needs more time. Like I'm not 100% sure on Swordmaster and Arrow just yet. So these could get hotfixed. These could get adjusted. I'm not saying these are my final opinions of these 2 characters specifically. But I lost with my Jean Grey to an Arrow in PvP. She actually died once. My Jean died once because Arrow actually has potential there, and then she also has potential in PvE. And honestly, once we get out of, like, you know, mid-tier Legendary, it starts to get pretty weak with some of these characters here. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hot. And then we have Sabretooth moving up. He was not that far down. He was just above Juggernaut, just below Molten Man. He just moves up to the top of Combat Legendary. There's really not much to say. One skill change doesn't seem like a lot, but then he's slapping stage 60 Proxima, and he can go even higher, and he doesn't need a CTP of Rage. So that, in my opinion, is a big plus. and it means that he's a flexible build, and he just does a ton of damage without having to rely on that defense reduction to do his damage. Down here at the bottom, we have our biggest winner of the update, Vision. Now, everyone's talking about Rogue, and a lot of people are making the joke, well, Cynicalex, we voted for Vision, but Rogue got a better rework. Did she, though? Rogue was actually a much better character than Vision before she got her rework. She was still basically trash, because in Marvel Future Fight, you're either godly or you're nothing, but Vision was straight up garbage. He could survive, but that's literally all he could do. He would tickle you with the amount of damage that he did, whereas Rogue could survive, and she did decent damage, and she could self-heal. So Vision jumps up 3 tiers. This is the biggest jump we've ever seen in a character, besides Hawkeye. He goes from the bottom of advanced tier. He was over here with Black Bolt and Ultron, and you know how terrible these characters are, and he jumps all the way to competing with Bishop. He's got PvE potential. I mean, he's got PvE skill. He's got damage. He hits hard. He might have PvP potential, but it's hard to invest in Vision for PvP when we have so many strong blast characters for PvP. But I think he could do it. So I'm just going to put that there on the radar. Over in the heroic tier, we also have quite a few new additions. Crescent moves up 1 full tier from the top of rare to the top of heroic. Honestly, not a lot to say about these characters here. Not a lot of competition. And she has a lot of weapons. Remember, immunity, penetration, self-healing, ignore dodge, reflect, accumulation. She's got a lot of weapons now, or she has a lot of weapons, and now she has 2 iframes. Swordmaster as well, he's just a strong character, and he's free. And he just has, you know, invincibility, immunity, 40% all attack, 20% crit rate buffs that are up all the time, and he's got all defense down. So he's basically got whatever these guys have and more, and he's easy to play because you can just rotate through different skills. His damage can fluctuate because of the targeting issue on his 5th skill, but when the damage hits, he can solo a stage 60 plus rumble by himself. That's something that not many of these characters can do, even on their best days, and he doesn't even have a uniform yet, so he does have potential there. I also moved down Kid Omega and Jubilee. They were, I believe, both in the legendary tier, but I sort of felt as though that was a bit of an excessive rating on these characters. They basically have no PvP potential whatsoever, whereas a lot of these characters do actually have utility in both game modes. So I did want to sort of make that clear. I don't want to talk about it too much, but yeah. And then last but not least, Dr. Voodoo at the top of heroic tier. Now, personally, I do think that he could be a lot higher. I mean, Blue Marvel is pretty much useless for PvE, and pretty useless now for PvP with tier 3s and level 70. So honestly, I think Dr. Voodoo could be around this level, possibly the top of legendary, if his heal worked on world bosses. He's got all defense down, he's got a strong leadership, he's got iframes, he's got mind control, he's got a lot of weapons. He's got a 2nd skill that lets him use a beam, that lets him move around like Strife. He does have a lot of weapons, I will give him that. The damage is a little bit suspect at times, and because it's not poison damage, you can't like augment it. You can't buff it up really fast, and you can't buff it up really high with like a double poison damage obelisk. So I've been using a CTP of Rage, and the results are good, but it's a CTP of Rage. So I sort of question what his ceiling is overall, and how much of the work is being done by him, and how much of the work is the combo of the Rage and the all defense down, in addition to the strikers and stuff like that. So yeah, this is also a bit of a statement. Do you really want Dr. Voodoo to be heroic tier, Netmarble? No, you want him to be legendary tier. He's Dr. Voodoo. Trust me, a lot of players want to play as Dr. Voodoo. Make him better so I can put him with, like, how is he worse than Vision? Think about that. Anyways, guys, this is the new 5.5 tier list. Let me know what you guys think of the list. Let me know what you think of my question on adding another tier. What do we do? Do we continue with this sort of scrolling thing or not? How do we fix this? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up with your suggestions. I really appreciate it. You can hit me up on Twitter, YouTube, Discord, etc. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.